Welcome in. It's ACC Baseball Etc, part of the D1 Baseball Podcast Network. We are making our way quickly now to the close to the end of the list of ACC coaches with our preseasoning interviews. Really excited for this next one. I'm Daron Vaught. Bradley Smart is here as well. Check out his stuff over at d1baseball.com, ACC Extra in particular. We're joined by Virginia's Chris Pollard, formerly, of course, longtime head coach at Duke in his first season at the helm for the Cavaliers. Chris, great to see you. It's always a good sign in that, we're about to be at the best time of the year. Let me start with this. It's different digs, but a lot of the people are the same. Like how do you balance the old and the new as you look toward the beginning of this 2026 season?
Well, it's a great question. It's been one of my biggest challenges, and I've been honest and open about the fact that the other three head coaching opportunities that I had, Pfeiffer University, Appalachian State, Duke University, were all three complete and total rebuilds, and we had nowhere to go but up. So whatever we did, we were going to get better. That's not the case here at the University of Virginia. It's one of the most storied programs in college baseball history. 7 trips to Omaha since 2009. Coach O'Connor built something really special, and it's unquestionably big shoes to fill. And so how do you stay true to the things that Oak and his staff and that group of players and the past players have built, while also, being your authentic self and staying true to things that work for you and your staff? It's a unique challenge. Ultimately, I have leaned heavily on our veteran returning core to get real tangible feedback from them on, hey, what has worked? What have you really liked? What do you not want to change? And where are some areas where you feel like we can insert a new lens, a new point of view? And guys like Eric Becker and Harrison Didewick, Kevin Jackson, Antonio Parada, guys that have got a lot of mileage in this program, have been great to point us in that right direction, to say, here are some things that we really value that we want to hold on to. Here are some things here's some areas where we think there's an opportunity for a new lens maybe to look at this.
Yeah. And when I saw you guys in the fall, one of the things we talked about is you described it sort of as, deer in the headlights moments where you're looking out on the field and it's a bunch of players that hadn't, obviously not used to your terminology, whole new coaching staff and stuff. But you said at the time, it was like, okay, we kind of saw a switch, like people really started to settle. Can you talk some about what that was like in the fall?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is just guys being able to slow the game down mentally, to free themselves up to be the best version of themselves physically. I think we were just all drinking from a fire hose from late August through late September, and everything I said was brand new to just about everybody on the field, particularly in the infield. And so every time you ran a bunt defense, it was kind of paint by numbers. Every time you introduced a first and third, guys really had to slow down and process things. And so there was this contrast between trying to do it the right way, but also do things at game speed and be reactionary and loose. And around the turn of the month towards October, there were enough reps there where guys were starting to get comfortable with terminology, comfortable with positioning, comfortable with each other. And all of a sudden guys started to free up. And then you saw over the last few weeks of the fall, hey, these guys are pretty good. And we can put, a lot of different combinations that are really athletic and really talented out there on the field together. Now, I could definitely tell you that over the first week back from the holiday break, like there was some mental rust there where all of a sudden it was like, hey, you know what? We talked about this, right? We went over this in the fall, but there was definitely some refreshing that had to happen. But then in that second week, like particularly the 2 scrimmages to finish last week, you could really see guys, the pace starting to quicken. guys become more reactionary and less having to stop and think things through. And I thought we were pretty good over those last two scrimmages.
Yeah. Why don't we start with the lineup, Coach? Just because in looking at the players you have, whether it be there at Virginia or with you guys at Duke or elsewhere, JUCO, another school, what have you, last year, I mean, you've got basically a lineup of 1 through 9 that you could fill of guys who had OPS of 950 plus last year. What's that depth going to be like, and how's it going to manifest as you write up a lineup card every day?
Well, if we're healthy, there is great depth and length to the lineup, right? You can put veteran experience really 1 through 9. And there's a great balance there, left to right. I think there's a nice balance between speed and power. But I think the one thing consistently that this group has shown they can do at a really high level is really understand the strike zone and not expand the strike zone. You know, I think through the first 5 scrimmages of this preseason, we're operating around about a 12% chase as a group. So this group has just been really good at not leaving the strike zone. And when you combine that with some of the bat to ball and some of the power, I think that's a really good combination. Now, the reality is that we don't have great experience in our second wave, right? So you look at the starting 9, it's a relatively experienced starting 9, but then you start playing the what if question. Basically, each guy's replacement is a freshman, right? And so, you know, to keep that veteran depth and length to the lineup, we've got to stay healthy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and when we kind of talk about some of the more specific guys in that group, I mean, the big names are really big names. You know, the Eric Beckers, the AJ Gracias. People are very familiar with a lot of those. Some of the Duke guys you might have brought over, and, you know, some of the other transfers are new faces for, you know, Virginia fans and those listening. Can you talk some about those other guys?
Sure. Well, just kind of working through the lineup right now, you're going to see some combination of Becker and Gracia at the top of the lineup, and we're still kind of playing with that to see what is the best iteration. And then immediately behind those two, Joe Tyroli, who was a 3rd-team All-American at Rider, Harrison Didewick, who was an All-American as a sophomore here at the University of Virginia, and then Sam Harris, who had a breakout year for us last year at Duke. So I think, you know, right now we feel pretty confident that's our 1 through 5 in some form or fashion. Gracia Becker or Becker Gracia to Tyroli, Didewick, and Sam Harris. And then that second wave, that bottom wave, you know, you've got some guys that have, you know, real veteran experience at either in this program or in some cases like a guy like Jake Weatherspoon, who was an All-American last year at Indian River Community College, was a Gold Glove winner, and you'll see why when you watch him catch. He can really receive the baseball. Noah Murray is a guy that was really good for us in spurts last year at Duke. Who really commands his own with great bat-to-ball skills, can play second or third. I tell you, a guy that we're really bullish on to have a breakout year is Antonio Parada, who's been mostly kind of in smaller roles here so far at UVA as a defensive replacement or a pinch hitter. And then a guy with enormous upside who so far this spring has really started to tap into it is Aiden Harris. You know, you talk about the State Player of the Year in the state of Virginia 2 years ago, you know, mostly pinch hit opportunities as a true freshman last year. But man, is the power real. I mean, it's 70 plus power. He's already hit 3 home runs in the preseason, just in the first couple of weeks that we've been back at it. Really starting to dominate the zone better, not leaving the zone as much. The defense around the bag at third base is continues to improve. So that's a guy that's making a lot of waves too.
Yeah, and when you look at guys like, you know, Parada and Murray and Harris, who have had roles, but pretty small ones in the past. How do you kind of prepare them for, okay, hey, you might get, 100 plus, 200 plus at bats. How do you sort of prepare them for that jump?
Yeah, I think part of it is physical, right? It's really getting their bodies built up and ready for that in the weight room. Andrew Benham, our strength coach, our sports performance coach, does an incredible job. And so, those guys are getting after it in the weight room right now, preparing for the grind that is the 56-game regular season in Division I college baseball. But I think a really big part of it is just preparing guys mentally too, right? And, we've talked a lot. One of our themes so far in the preseason has been preparing for the storm, right? And we talked in our opening meeting about over the course of a college baseball season, even a season that goes well, the championship seasons, the NCAA tournament seasons, the 40-win seasons, even in great seasons, you're going to face storms. And are you ready for those? And we've talked a lot, and I heard this analogy before the holiday break, and I've used it a bunch with our team since. It's like, when the storm comes, are you going to be the cow, or are you going to be the horse, or are you going to be the buffalo, right? And our guys looked at me when I said it in our opening team meeting, and they're like, "What's Coach talking about? He's gone off the rails." But when the storm moves from the west to the east, the cow faces east, panics and runs. The horse turns and faces east and just kind of stands in place and tries to ride the storm out. But the buffalo will turn west. He'll face the storm and he'll charge right into the storm. And by charging into the storm, they run through the storm. So they actually minimize the impact of the storm. And so for us, preparing for the storm and preparing to be buffaloes, that's been a big part of what we've talked about so far in this preseason.
I love that. When you look at Eric Becker and Harrison Didowick, guys who have a lot of equity with that program, and you mentioned it, using them to kind of determine what you guys want to do with the program. In terms of, like, from a baseball perspective, I think it's safe to say you and your staff were relatively familiar with the two as foes previously. What are some things you learned about those two in particular that you maybe didn't know before?
Incredible work ethic. You never know how guys train behind the scenes, right? I mean, a UVA team is going to work. I've had that respect for Coach O'Connor over the years. His teams are always going to work, but those guys put in so much time on their own. They're both quintessential gym rats, or I guess in our sport you call them field rats, but they're guys that are early to the facility, and I leave out of here 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and I still see their cars in the parking lot. They love to train, they love to get extra reps. They love being around the facility. I think that's the biggest thing that jumps out, is just the incredible work ethic that both of them have. They're both tremendous leaders in different ways. Diddy's a vocal guy. He's always talking. He's a guy that is constantly engaging in the dugout, and it's really good baseball chatter. Eric is more of a lead by example. He's quieter just by personality, but it's also been cool to really see him find his voice too. And both those guys have done an incredible job from a leadership perspective.
Yeah. And when you look at Didowick, obviously last year was kind of a disappointing one on the field for him, just when you look at his numbers compared to what he'd done in the past. And I know he was banged up in the fall, but what's kind of the focus with him in sort of getting him right?
Well, I think the biggest thing has been getting him back to full health. Tell all these guys all the time, the best ability is availability, right? Bill Parcells used to say that all the time, and it's true, right? So keeping him healthy. If there's a negative about Harrison Didowick, he works so hard that sometimes he'll overtrain. Yeah. And so some of his soft tissue injuries, I think, can be attributed to some overtraining. And so that's been one of the focal points, is just talking about, hey, like, understanding, I know you love to work, I know you love to live in the cages, but understanding that, hey, you also got to take care of your body over the long haul as well. I see how he squares the baseball up, he's worked really hard on hitting in a little bit smaller zone. And I think that's going to pay really big dividends for him. But you're talking about a guy that's had unbelievable years in the ACC. Listen, I've lived through it with a lot of guys over the years. Playing that draft year is really hard. And I think it can be even harder for a draft eligible sophomore who passes on the opportunity to sign and comes back as a junior, because you're constantly sort of competing against that opportunity that you had the previous year. And so I think having that in the past and having gone through that experience as a junior and now being able to get some of that weight off and say, hey, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy this for what it is. It's my last opportunity in a UVA baseball uniform. And he loves it here at this university. And, I think you'll see a guy that's really freed up and not playing with so much weight on his shoulders.
I love that for him. Again, just knowing what he can be, and what he has been and what we've seen with our own eyes. I'm excited for that, for him to kind of play maybe a little looser. That'd be great to see.
And Daron, he is a guy that you root for, man. He is an awesome human, and his teammates love him. He's such a positive energy source around the clubhouse. So he's an easy guy to pull for.
Yeah. I want to move, Chris, to the pitching. And what's funny is we have these internal chats at D1. So there's conversation about every team. What's the biggest strength? What's the biggest concern? I don't get concerned with you guys, with you and BK as the pitching coach anymore when that main concern going into a season is pitching. And I know obviously you've got a ton of talent. It looks like you guys are going to have the potential to be very left-handed heavy, especially in the rotation. How good do you feel about the pitching and what's going to come into focus once the season gets starting?
Yeah, I think what we are waiting for and hoping for is that a few of these young guys are going to really pop. And I think you're starting to see it. Kyle Johnson had a terrific bounce back fall after a tough sophomore campaign. I'm so proud of that dude and the work he's put in mentally and physically. And he is so much better as a pitcher for having gone through that tough sophomore year. He's learned how to really pitch. And I think he's poised to have a great year. And if we started tomorrow, he would absolutely take the ball on Friday night for us. Max Stammel is a guy that started to make a big jump this summer in the Cape, and he's just continued to stack days on top of that. The fastball command kind of held him back as a freshman last year at Duke, but he's really commanded the fastball, and he's changed the shape of the breaking ball. It's more of a swing and miss pitch. He commands it better, and the one piece that's always been there that's a true outlier is the changeup. And it's a unicorn. I mean, it's a true swing and miss pitch, and he throws it left on left better than any guy I've ever coached. And then you've got a guy in Henry Zakowski who, had a tremendous freshman year, started the championship game of a super regional, and left the game with us in the lead with a chance to go to Omaha. And so he's been in some big spots. He throws a ton of strikes. He threw 3 pitches at 65% plus strikes all fall. So he just lives in the zone. And so you got 3 left-handers that have a chance to kind of anchor that rotation. And then you've got some really big high-end arms out of the pen who we're just going to keep running them out there until they figure it out, until they pop. Some of the best arm talent that I've ever been around. So we have no shortage of stuff and options in terms of guys that we can run out of the pen, especially some high-end stuff out of that freshman group, out of that first-year group. And so those guys, we need to bring them along slow. And right now we're going to put them in there in spots where they get to sprint instead of try to pace themselves over a longer distance run. and then we'll gradually build them out as they get more and more comfortable in those competitive environments. But we've got a lot of puzzle pieces in the bullpen that we can run out there with really high-end stuff. And then a couple of experienced guys, albeit they're new to UVA, they're not new to college baseball, in Tyler Kappa and Lucas Hartman, guys that have already had a lot of success at the Division I level that'll kind of anchor things on the back end with their experience, and in Kappa's case with really high-end stuff coming in out of the back end in the bullpen. So I like the overall makeup of this pitching staff, but we are going to need, for some young guys who haven't done it yet at this level, to figure it out over the course of this spring. And that's what Brady does a great job with. You referenced Brady Kirkpatrick. What he does the best, and he does a lot of things really well, as you guys know, but what he does the best, he's really good at putting guys in the ball game in a spot that sets them up for success. He's really good at finding matchups and spots in a lineup where go, hey, if we put him in there right now, this is a great spot for him to have success that he can build off of as we go through the season. And so I'm excited about the way the pitching staff will come together over the course of the season.
Yeah, I feel like the phrase putting them in the right spots for success is one that, we've heard back when you were at Duke and sort of saw it play out with some of those teams. Like the 2023 team's a good example of that, where it was not length from starters at all, but you guys consistently put guys where they needed to be to get results. The one sort of follow-up to the rotation, you project sort of 3 lefties, and then I think you only have maybe 3 or 4 other left-handers. So what sort of game planning do you kind of have to do and sort of address that, where it's like, hey, these are probably our 3 best starters right now, but what do we kind of do late in games?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think, that's where we're going to have to be really good at the traditional split and reverse split model, because we've got a couple of right-handers that, just by the nature of their stuff, create pretty good reverse splits. And so they have to kind of be our matchup lefties, even though they're right-handed, right? They're guys that we're going to earmark to go in against a lefty-heavy lineup or a lefty-heavy section of a lineup, because they've shown the ability to get left-handers out. We're not going to have a lot of true left-on-left matchup capability out of the bullpen. And that's one of the things that we'll have to be adept at maneuvering around over the course of the year.
Could I follow up on KJ, Chris? You mentioned his improvement on the mound. We have known him since his entry into the league as a two-way star and just a potential game changer in that regard. Even with the depth you guys have offensively, how much is going to be expected of him in the lineup as a hitter?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I don't know that I can completely answer it today, but he absolutely is going to factor in for us offensively. But we have to do it in a way that's smart and logical and doesn't take away from what he's doing on the mound. The great thing is, going into this year, Kyle really understands that his most important role for us is on the mound. And he also understands that his future in professional baseball is on the mound. And so we had an honest and candid conversation right at the beginning of the fall to say, hey, how do you want to approach this year from a two-way standpoint? Very similar to a conversation that I had with Jonathan Santucci in the fall of 2023, when he'd been a two-way guy in the program for his first 2 years, but it became clear that he was going to play a larger role in the rotation and that his draft stock was going to be as a pitcher. And Kyle really maturely answered my question and said, hey, Coach, I know that my future now is on the mound at the next level. I know this might be my last year to swing a bat, but if it is, I want to have fun with it and I want to try to help this team in every way I can. So, he is having a really good preseason, both the fall and so far here in January at the plate. And so it's created a complicated situation for us in that it'd been easy if he was just struggling at the plate and we say, hey, just go be a pitcher. But he's swinging the bat really well. So he's going to factor in for us, whether it's as a DH, whether it's at times in right field, whether it's matching up against left-handed pitching. You'll absolutely see at bats from Kyle this spring.
Yeah, that tracks. The numbers out of the fall were pretty impressive from him on both sides, obviously. I guess another sort of pitching related one. You mentioned, the arm talent you have is some of the best you've ever seen. I know the freshman class plays a big part in that, just with the potential and sort of getting them up to speed. Who are some of the freshmen, listeners should know?
Yeah. Well, Noah Yoder has a really big arm, maybe the biggest of any freshman that I've ever coached. He did not throw live all fall. He was in a return to throw progression, had just started throwing bullpens at the end of the fall. So he just threw live for the first time a week and a half ago. And the first bolt out of his hand, kind of my eyebrows raised. And then the second bolt out of his hand, I said, man, that's pretty firm. And I looked at ET and he looked over at his iPad and it was a 99-mile-an-hour fastball on TrackMan. And he said, yeah, coach, that's firm. And it's real. And I think I didn't realize the breaking ball was as good as it was. I mean, it's a pro shape, really firm breaking ball that's capable of producing a lot of swing and miss. So there's one right there. John Payon also did not throw live this fall, has had 2 really good outings out of the chute for us. Christian Lucarelli is another first-year arm. He did pitch live this fall and had a really good fall. He can ride the fastball to the top of the zone at 94, 95. Really good competitor. Can put a cutter and a slider in the zone. So those 3 first-year arms all have a chance to play a big role for us this spring.
I've got one thing left for you, and it's about the adjustment with you and your coaching staff to from Durham to Charlottesville. You got your coffee spots, you got your places you like to eat. Is everybody kind of settled there as a human so that you can be more settled as a baseball coach?
Yeah, I think that's such an important question. I'm glad you asked. I think, when we got to Thanksgiving and when we got to the holidays, that was an important time for us to all kind of come up for air. We hadn't done that, since since January of 2025, when you think about all that goes into prepping for a season, then playing a season, then a deep postseason run, and then you go right into transitioning into a new opportunity in a new town and trying to get relocated, but trying to put a roster back together. And right when you look up from the summer recruiting blitz, you've started the fall. And, around November, we were all pretty fried, and the holiday break was really important. But I feel like our staff feels like they've got their feet underneath us now. We love this community. And let me tell you guys, I can't say enough about how welcoming this Charlottesville and this University of Virginia community have been to us, the care that they have for this program, and how excited they are about this coming season. It's been humbling for all of us. It's been energizing. It's been motivating. And so that piece has been so much fun. And so we're thrilled to be here. We're grateful for the opportunity, and it's a great group of players to get to work with day in and day out. So, we're just like everybody else around the country, chomping at the bit for February 13th.
That's it. I know you guys are dealing with some snow currently, much like a lot of the country. Although it's funny, I talked to JD at Miami yesterday, and he just kind of was laughing at the rest of you. He looks out his window and says it's 77 and sunny. It's a little bit more wintry weather than I think you ever had to deal with in Durham, right? I mean, except for an occasional storm.
It is, and you know, so far 2026 has been a real winter across the country, not just here in Charlottesville. So, yeah, you know, it is what it is, right? Like you roll with the punches. We've got some snow out there right now. We got to figure out a way to get rid of it, but we've got great indoor training facilities, and guys are continuing to work and push. But yeah, I'll be excited for some 60-degree weather for sure.
Had to dip into that App State coaching experience a little bit this winter, right?
Yeah, I've been through this before. Yes, for sure. So I had to, more so than anything, I had to dust off my winter driving skills. You don't get to practice those a lot in Durham. You know, you hone those to perfection in Boone. You better be a really good winter weather driver in Boone, North Carolina. But you know, you dust those off when you get here to Charlottesville.
I love it. Love it. We're excited for February 13th as well, Coach. As always, appreciate the time. Best of luck this year, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, appreciate you guys too.